don't know why it surprises me so much, but every Tuesday, not every Tuesday, regularly here on these Tuesday sessions, I surprise myself at how much better the songs are that we listen to, or I listen to as intro music, in headphones. You get the stereo effect going on. I should listen to music with head. No, I know the reason I don't is because I've listened to loud music and played loud music and done stupid things with loud music for far too long, and I know that I shouldn't be subjecting my ears to this, to the more trauma than they already have. Hello. Hope you appreciated the nice music, and hopefully you had some headphones on to listen to the nice music. My name is John Kulas. I'm a 20-year professor of industrial and organizational psychology. 12? About a 12-year user of R for normal statistical and analytical operations. But that's boring. I found out early that's kind of boring. It's not boring. It's fine, but it's limited. So for the last 9 or 10 years, so for the majority of the time that I've been using R, I've also been using the R package ecosystem to support other functions, and those other functions include authoring. So writing papers and making presentations and websites and books and oh my, all these sorts of things. So every week I hang out here on Tuesday for about an hour. Last week was a bit of an exception. If you stuck with me, thank you. But I try to hang out for about an hour, and we're just here exploring features of using R in kind of this atypical way. Now I say R because my introduction to this way of structuring work was through my analytical platform, and the language of choice for me at the time that I started doing this was R. You're not technically scripting in R to make the papers. You're using a typesetting language, either primarily markdown or LaTeX, or increasingly Quarto language. And Quarto is kind of a markdown facilitator and a interpreter of all sorts of different ways of scripting things. It's fun. You should do it. I hope more people do it. And I appreciate you being here. So we have a small community of people that are kind of interested in this, and we hang out every Tuesday. Or many people stumble across this after Tuesday, and that's fine as well. Because I was a professor for so long, I do use this metaphor of an office hour, and so the thought is that I'll just be here with the door kind of open, and if you have a question, just pop on in. By the way, as a professor, I don't think I ever scheduled a meeting for office hours. Maybe that's why they weren't very popular. But I never told students that they needed to make an appointment. I always just told them to just pop on by and knock on my door. And that's what you should do if you have a question. So that's kind of the point of doing this live every Tuesday, is if somebody does want some kind of a sounding board for some ideas, I'm here for that. But in the absence of that, we've been checking out just kind of capabilities and focused features of structuring your work in this way. And tonight we're going to check out making an invoice. And so I think that'll be kind of fun. I haven't checked out this capability myself, so we'll go through it together in terms of how to engage with it and what kind of products we can produce from it. I kind of forgot I did this. So before we get to this week's recap, so because when we explore these things, it's open-ended, it's exploratory, there's no script. Because of that, each week I'll also do a recap of the previous week that's hopefully structured in a little more, in a manner that's conducive or a little more helpful for learning. So we'll do that in just a second. But before we get to that normal part of this weekly session, there is some breaking news that did happen this week. I'm sure there's a lot of breaking news that happened this week, but the breaking news that's relevant to us is that there's a new version of Quarto that was released. And so it's Quarto 1. It's a little confusing. So it looks like Quarto 1.1. That's actually a 1.10. And the reason I know that is because I currently have Quarto 1.9 point something installed on my machine. And this one doesn't look like it was it doesn't look like there were a ton of updates on this. It kind of sounds like it's a maintenance release. So they do have a few improvements. I know accessibility is something that the Quarto team, I keep seeing more and more frequently from their communications. Localized strings used in custom templates. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that actually means. I guess we could take a look at it. We'll take a look at it quickly here. Axe Core is one of the accessibility kind of features that is run through Quarto, or can be run through Quarto. We checked that out a few weeks ago, so there's some information about accessibility there. Custom templates, and now Pandoc is kind of the under the hood feature that lets us script in this Quarto-ish language and then produce all sorts of different documents, Word documents and HTML documents and PDF documents. And so there's something specific about that. I'm a little more interested in the fixes here. Quarto preview. So I'm using RStudio, and I know that many of you are also using RStudio as my primary IDE. Now, within Quarto Studio, the difference between previewing a document and rendering a document is, in my opinion, in my experience, it's a semantic difference. So there isn't really much of a difference. We're largely going to render within RStudio. However, different IDEs, this preview command is more important. So, for example, I work within Jupyter Lab a little more frequently than I used to, and I do use preview within there. And so it looks like there's going to be a bit of a change to that preview. Short codes are now resolved inside inline and display math. Okay, so this we're going to want to check out. I think we'll hold off on this until next week because I need to do a little bit of background homework on this, so I'm a little more informed as we go into it. I don't feel good just going into this completely unfamiliar with what they actually did. PDF font fallbacks, typist font. So there is quite a bit here. I think I'll hold off on updating my Quarto until next week. We'll load it next week, and maybe I'll spend a little more time than I normally would on an installation, and we can check out some of those new features too. So unless somebody really wants to see that right here, I think that's what we'll do. So that's the breaking news. Let's get into our transition into what happened last week. Please, Mr. Narrator, can you help remind us what was going on?
Believe it or not, it all started with a newspaper publicity stunt. The Frostbite Falls Picayune Intelligence buried $1 million in Confederate money and offered a prize to the person who could find it. The town was soon full of holes, one of which was dug right under the town bank by babyface Braunschweiger and his gang. When they escaped with their stolen loot, Rocky and Bullwinkle tracked them down and got it back. Now Bullwinkle is sitting in a basement cell in the sheriff's station, waiting for the bank to open. Outside, babyface,
or as we know him, Boris Bedenoff,
is planning to break into the jail and get the loot back again.
But that's a plan for breaking out of jail, babyface.
Of course, we just follow plan backward.
Well, it like.
You seen one jailbreak, you seen them all. First, we crashed through gate in East Wall. Come on.
But Boris's brilliant plan failed in just one detail. There was no gate in the East Wall.
I got better idea. We get sheriff to invite us into jail.
Invite us? How?
Easy. All we got to do is get arrested.
Of course.
You done it again, Chief.
Now, here is plan. We find policeman A. Then Spike, you break street light, B. Three Finger, you take big stick and hit little old lady C. And Slug, you draw mustache on picture of pretty girl D.
That went on longer than normal, and I know that I always apologize for this. I probably shouldn't be so self-conscious about it, but the reason that I let this one go on so long is because I love it when Boris says little old lady. I just like the way he says it. And there are consequences to me letting it go on longer, because I do get notification from YouTube that the video is blocked in some territories, and it's always Russia. It's Russia, and I don't know, so it gets blocked when I have too long of Boris Badenov. So I didn't think he had a Russian accent. I thought it was just Eastern European, but I guess maybe it's Russian. Russia does not like it when we go long with the Rocky and Bullwinkle transitions. But we'll just live with it, I guess. So last week was week 3 of trying something very specific with AI. And so that very specific thing we did within AI was we actually chose to engage with GitHub Copilot from within the GitHub environment itself. And so not within our scripting environment, but within the location where I'm keeping the files that are going to be used to create the capability that we wanted to create. So the first week we just decided, yeah, let's try that as the way to do it. We issued this prompt here, and then we spent, I don't know, 20 minutes roughly just saying, okay, this doesn't seem to work as we hoped it would. So about 20 minutes of kind of failing, coming back into it on week two. Week two, we actually did get 2 out of the 3 capabilities that we were interested in to work. The interesting thing about week 2 was that I initially asked for a dashboard, and the Copilot, GitHub Copilot said, well, yeah, I know you want that eventually, but I'm going to give you just an older shiny app kind of structure. And that was great. It's something, again, I worry about AI having mental sets, but that was a mental set on mine. I wasn't thinking as I normally should be thinking in terms of, let's strip this down and not worry so much about the formatting of it, but let's just see if we can get the base capability going. And so we built that app, and that's what we actually stayed with. I haven't changed from there. It turns out that it's perfect. I probably should have just asked for an app, not the full dashboard. The other thing that the AI did was it actually gave us like a fallback, a primary and a secondary way to do what we wanted to do. And then other stuff that we talked about last week. But the one thing that it didn't, the one thing that it wasn't, that we weren't able to accomplish the second week was to do our third goal. So we were able to accept an address into the interface. We were able to locate and zoom that address using a leaflet map. And then the third thing I wanted to do was to connect to some database that can pull information that's relevant for that address that we actually answered or entered. And so we did that last week. When I say we, it was primarily GitHub Copilot, and I was just kind of giving it some feedback in terms of, yes, that's close to what we want. No, that's not exactly what we want. And again, with kind of the handcuff, the intentional handcuff that we had, which was we're going to try to work with it from within GitHub, because that's a little bit different than how I've been engaging with these AIs previously. And so I'm pretty sure it wasn't the most efficient way that we could have done this, but I'm glad that we did it just to kind of, I don't know, just kind of go through that process. It was neat. I was honestly, kind of selfishly, I was most interested in the GitHub Copilot ability to directly impact my repository with all my files in it. And so it did that, and that was kind of neat. So what it actually did in terms of the capability that we wanted was it broke up the Shiny app into 2 different files. And so I have a note here. This is all self-contained. If any of you wanted to take these 2 scripts, you can use this clipboard here. If you want to take both those scripts and just put them in the same folder location, you should be able to run the app.r and get the same app that we got, with the one caveat being that the GitHub Copilot in the file structure of my project directory, it actually made a subdirectory called R, the capital letter R. And that's what that on line 9, when it says in double quotes, it says r/helpers.r. It's saying that the helpers.r script is located in a R subfolder to wherever we currently are. Now I thought about making it simpler because I know not everyone's comfortable with that level of specification, finding and locating where things are on your local computer. So if you do want to take both of these and just paste them into the same folder space, you will want to just get rid of these 2 characters right here, the large R and /. You can also copy everything in here and just paste it into this app.r file as well. The GitHub Copilot did something kind of neat, and I used to use this source function more frequently when I was writing papers, and I had a large, for example, data manipulation script that was, I don't know, hundreds or maybe 1,000 lines of code, and you didn't want it to clutter your main paper. You could just simply call it up using this source function. And so it's fun to see that GitHub Copilot used that as well. I used to use that a little more frequently. I haven't used it it, it was nice to see it because it reminded me of what I used to do. It was nostalgic, I guess, if that makes any sense. And then this is the final app. So this is the app that I'm happy with, and I'm taking this and I'm going to show my collaborator on this. So I have a colleague whose background is in geography, not psychology, and he thinks he has a commercial application for doing some geocoding and mapping. And so the point of doing this is we were just trying to establish some baseline capabilities, and then we can build it out from there. I don't have his full vision in terms of what he wants to build this out into, but you can, if you want to click on that map, you can test this out. And we've tested out, well, let's just do Wrigley Field, I guess. It is, what is it? 1060 West Addison. So I'm going to put that a little off screen, and I'm going to say 1060 West Addison. Where's the rest of it? 1060 West Addison. Sorry, my other screen here changed kind of its display. So West Addison Street, that's in Chicago, and 60613. So we'll see if I can find that. And so there's some debugging on here, but it should show, just from the leaflet capability, it should show the latitude and longitude. And then this ACS information, we're going to need to connect to a database for that, and that was the third capability that we were really interested in. The GitHub Copilot did give us this debug log here that once the app is up and the creators are happy with it, we'll take that off for end users eventually, but we'll see if it can locate that address. There it is. There's Wrigley Field. Now here you can see that we're not getting any information on these two fields here. So, and this is baked into the actual, if we look through the app.r, I think this is probably in the helper.r script, but you will see that this feedback that we're getting is actually hard baked into the app capability itself. That is, we're saying if there's no census key, then give this feedback to the user. And it's even saying, set census API key to be able to fetch the information, and that will give us the capability that I was most interested in, which is connecting to a secondary database and source of information. And so I already have that on my clipboard, so I took it off. Had it on my clipboard. Oh, you know what I did? That was kind of silly. I think I copied, when I was demonstrating how to use the clipboard in this week's slides. By the way, this week's slides are available. This week's slides are available in the comments. They're also in the description of the video. When I was using the slides, I accidentally hit the clipboard. But now that that's just a simple connection to the I think it's called the American Community Survey. It's the ACS, which is something that the U.S. Census runs. Me and colleagues have used it before for different kind of purposes. Anyone can get it, so you can actually, there's a hyperlink here. If you want to get your own census key, you can sign up for it. And we're just pulling in some basic information relevant to that particular address. If we were to put a different address in, now that the census API key has been set, we'll do, what's the Fenway Park? We'll do Fenway Park, and that's at 4 Jersey Street, Boston, Massachusetts, 00215. See if we can locate that address. There it is, very nice. And you'll see that there's different information here that's actually pulled from the U.S. Census. And so we decided to primarily focus on the census tract as the information that is sufficient for us in terms of confirming that we're able to connect to that database. So that's That's what we spent 3 weeks doing. I would say, and again, if you want to see the app, click on this, it'll take you to it. If you want to create the app yourself, you can use these two files, and that's fully that's all you need in order to execute that app that we actually have. Keep in mind that if you put the helpers.r script in the same folder location, you're going to want to go in and get rid of the subdirectory here. Alternatively, you can make a subdirectory. I just know that not everyone's comfortable with that. Okay, so that was last week. That was neat. I am still waiting on my collaborator here to get back to me and say whether he wants to do anything more with this or not. I kind of hope he does, because we spent 3 weeks. We spent 3 weeks, and I wasted a bunch of tokens just building that thing. So I will say I wanted to keep track of the amount of time it took. And again, keep in mind that we didn't use the most efficient process here. We used a process that I wanted to check out. And I would say in total, it was about 2 hours. So it took us 3 sessions, and one of those sessions was close to 2 hours. But keep in mind the beginning of these sessions, the half hour, I usually spend about a half hour talking about the previous session. So I would run that at about 2 hours, maybe as much as 2.5 hours, although I didn't do a careful auditing. Okay, so speaking of auditing, today we will be checking out a Quarto extension that creates invoices. Now, invoices are just bills, but they're bills that companies generally send send to other companies. For whatever reason, and when we just go through life and you open your mail and you see something from the electric company, it's a bill. It's an invoice as well. I don't know why it's not called an invoice. I don't know if there's a technical difference between a business to business bill and a business to customer bill, but an invoice is the way that businesses let their clients know that there's money due. Hey, you owe us some money, and this is why you owe us the money. This is when you need to pay by, and these are the consequences if you don't pay us the money. So let's see if we can make one using these processes that we talk about each week here. So I have a hyperlink to the capability that we're going to check out. This capability is on a GitHub repository. The repository is owned by this person who's quite prolific. I believe he has some association. With Posit. Although let's see, senior biostatistician at Aztec. Freelance developer. Okay, so maybe he's just kind of doing this. Maybe he just kind of does this prolifically as a hobby. Regardless, he's done many things in Quarto that we've taken a look at, and they've all been great, honestly. So we're going to check out what he has with the. As I say that, his hyperlink is dead. What? We're going to check out what he actually has with the invoice here. Now, the invoice is using, on these weekly sessions, we've been focused on 3 different document types: HTML documents, traditional PDF documents that historically have been supported by LaTeX, which is kind of a different typesetting language, and typist. And typist is kind of this newer PDF generator. And so this is going to be a type list. It's going to be a typist invoice. Now, here's an example, and this is probably going to just be the first one that we render. So there's some elements here we can take a look at. There is the invoicing company. There is the company or the entity that you are saying, hey, you owe us some money. This is the entity that you want to shake down. So the shakedown and the shakedown E, they're both identified in this invoice. I'm guessing those aren't the fields that are used in the YAML here when we get to it. Now, there's our good contributor here must be, I'm guessing, is European. So VAT, I believe that stands for value add tax or value added tax. It's very common in Europe. I'm not in Europe, so I know in Great Britain in particular, that's something that is quite common. And there is some concession that's made for tourists on VAT on this particular tax, and it's kind of in the back of my mind, but I don't remember exactly what it is. But we don't need to worry about it. We only need to worry about it if it's a mandatory field, because our English clients are going to be like, what? Or our American clients are going to be like, what the heck is a VAT? Why are you charging me this VAT? I don't know any VAT. Now, in America, VAT is probably more commonly it's more commonly manifest as either a sales tax or a state tax, I would imagine. Now, in my field of industrial and organizational psychology, when there's a product or service provided, the invoicing that I'm familiar with, we do not include tax in the invoice. So this is something that it's a field that I'm not guessing that if you're an IO psychologist watching this, that is going to be necessarily relevant for you. Invoice number, we'll see if there's a way to auto generate this. When I do my invoices, I use a similar kind of process. I usually number them. I don't have dashes, but it'll be something like the year, the month, the day, and then, so that's kind of how I generate invoice numbers, and those are for internal records. If you ever get audited, it's good to have. You're going to want to match it up with the client. If the client says this is an invoice number, you should have an invoice on the other end that matches that. I think this is just the title. So I think this is a title of the invoice itself. We'll see. But here's a description of why you're being billed. For what reason, good sir, are you wanting money from me, or madame? And then this is the part that we're going to be most interested in. There is a built into this capability. There is kind of an auto-generated table. Now you can bypass this. I did look ahead and kind of see what some of these capabilities look like. So there's two ways to generate this. One is kind of auto-generated in the YAML, the front matter of your Quarto document, or the other one can be done in the body of your document itself. You can put in your own table. But I'm kind of curious to see kind of some of the auto processes on here in terms of how are these numbers calculated? Are they well calculated? That is, do they add up to the right number? Because that would be an issue. There's some bank information on here in terms of how to come there and manually change it. No discount will be granted for early settlement. Wow. This real stickler, this example consulting is a real stickler, or maybe they're just being specific to Director Doe and Company. I don't know. All right, let's check it out. So the way to access it is we're going to use the template that is recommended. I'm going to go to the repository just to make sure that I'm pulling the right information here. It looks like it is the same, so creating a new invoice. So I'm going to copy that, and as long as you have an internet connection, that's one of those kind of almost unstated requirements but you generally do need it if you're going. Well, you do need it if you want to connect to these extension capabilities. The other thing we have is Quarto. As I said, we have an older version of Quarto, so I think we can probably go to the terminal. Quarto version. Maybe it's not in there. I'm kind of curious how to find it. Let's do a quick search here. Find Quarto. I'm doing this offline. Sorry. Find Quarto version via R. Let's see if there's an R command. I know there's a Quarto command as well. It looks like it's just Quarto version. Oh no, that doesn't work. I'm looking at something that says this doesn't work. Oh, Quarto check. So I was saying version, but it looks like it's check. So there we are. So I'm on one. So I'm on. There's a lot in there. So we'll. Sorry. This is a public service announcement to look ahead at all the information that you're going to get before you actually Run the command. Okay, there is a, what I actually wanted was similar to Quarto version. It's just Quarto dash dash version, it looks like. And that's all I wanted, was just the kind of bare bones version of what was printed out here. Okay, so we're on 1.9.37. You do want Quarto installed. Other than that, it should be good to go. I am going to open up a different project directory, because when we're using these extensions, it's helpful to keep everything kind of located in the same location. It's just a lot less messy. So we'll call it invoice. And the location is going to screw me up later this week when I kind of do a different project and forget that that's the last place I was. But now that we're within the project directory, I am going to go to my terminal and I am going to enter the command that we cut from the repository here. And then if it works properly, we should see my file space here in the lower right panel become populated with an underscore extensions folder. Don't need a subdirectory. Sometimes they ask for that, sometimes they don't. The changes that it makes are just adding something, but it's kind of standard Quarto workflow, and you're going through here that it does that. So there's the extensions folder, and there's a bunch of capabilities in there. You see a lot of type files, which is great, which means that, for example, if the European tax is something that is mandatory and I don't want it, we can go in there and change that. And we can change that by kind of modifying this capability to be customized for us. And if we, I mean, let's just see how it works. I don't see an example here, which means that, oh, there's an invoice QMD that came up. So the example, oh, and there's an examples folder as well. Wonderful. Okay, so let's check out the invoice QMD and see if we get we just get anything funny that comes up before. This is very, it's 61 lines of YAML. Now again, this is the front matter in these Quarto and our markdown documents. It's the metadata. It says kind of what I want to apply to the entire document. This particular contributor chose to populate all of the capability within the YAML itself. So it's different. That's a different way to do this. The title, description, sender is going to be important. That's what's going to appear on the upper left-hand version of your invoice. Then we have an invoice block. So I do believe the author of this does refer to these different bits as different kind of blocks within the YAML. So there's a sender block, there's an invoice block, there's a bank block, there's a recipient block, and we'll maybe move these around and see if that has any impact, because honestly I would like to move the recipient up next to the sender just because that's the way the document looks. Index, language, region, paper size. Some of this is just going to be default, so we should be able to get rid of some of this. We should be able to get rid of some of this such that our YAML isn't quite so massive. The branding, I don't know that we want the branding. Let's look for a simpler one. I'm going to see if there's a little simpler one. This is the same one. So I thought I did see, here's a quick start one. This is perfect. So here's one that's only 20 or so lines. So let's try that. I'm going to create a new Quarto document. I'm going to come in there blank and copy all and paste. Now, we're not getting the header and the opening and closing fence for the YAML. We're not getting, those are just 3 dashes. So I'm going to put 3 dashes at the top and then also 3 dashes at the bottom. And our markdown used to be really picky about spaces and indents and things like that. Quarto seems to be a lot more forgiving. So we'll go ahead and see if we can render this. And I'm just going to render it as example. Again, not sure it'll work because of the way that we copied it. Look at that. That looks great. So this is stripped down to what we previously saw. There's still a boilerplate here. Now, 1st of May 2026, we're going to want to see where that's coming from. The values in the invoice, now that we're going to be most interested in kind of playing with that. So let's first of all see if we can, and I like this template to start with because it's very bare bones. And on the help page, see if I can find it. As usual, I have too many tabs open. But on the help page, there is a reference page here for every option. And so this tells us all of the options that we can include. As you see, he mentions 3 blocks. And I believe these are the major YAML components that he's actually talking about. So we should be able to put a sender email in there. So let's try that. So sender email, who's our sender? Example consulting should be. So yeah, you can see that this is very stripped down as opposed to the invoice QMD that has, we have lines 4 through 14 are all associated just with the sender, as opposed to the stripped down example. We just have 2 lines, but we're going to add some. We're going to add some of our own. So I want to try sender email and see what that looks like when it renders. Probably have to use double quotes on this, but we'll put mine on there, and we can actually maybe even test it and see if that comes through. The description says it'll come through as a mail to. So I didn't see it come through. So we'll actually, let's see if it requires some other information for the email to come in. It's under name. So it has name, not sender name. Oh, the name of the so it kind of looks like it's organized by name of the entity, the organization, and then the individual as well. So I'll put my full name there, and then maybe we'll get something show up in terms of email. Not yet. Okay, so let's look a little deeper here. Sender registration, sender bat. Let's try it and see how it's organized in the invoice. Because, so it looks to me, it might be the quotes. It looks to me like some of the fields, need to be updated on the help page. But it could be the single quotes, double quotes. Yeah, it looks like that might have been a previous field, whereas now it's simplified to just email, unless I'm reading the instructions wrong. Yeah, there it is. So it looks like there's a little disconnect here between some of the description here on this help page and what the actual field names are, what the actual valid values are. That's fine. Now, if this is a mail to, if this does render as a mail to, then that's great because it's hyperlinked. So you can, or the client can click on this and it'll bring up whatever the local email kind of program is. It'll bring up and then walk through that. So that's great. I like it. Okay, so let's see what other kind of things we can do with this. You know what? Let's try double quotes on this just really quick to see. Oftentimes with these YAML, the quotes, double quotes, or no quotes are inconsequential, and that's good. And that's another evolution of the YAML language itself. Is there used to be a lot more, there used to be a lot less tolerance on that, and it's a lot more forgiving now.
What?
Forgiving. The numbers, I was interested in the numbers. So it is actually, that's so cool. It is actually pulling up all these numbers on its own. So it's doing that off of the items description. So we should be able to add one here. So description, Hoka, Bubkus, Bunkus, and Hokum. That's just a British way, maybe, I don't know, not English, way of saying foolishness. Quantity, well, there's definitely at least two of those. We'll say there's four of them. Unit price is, they can't be worth much. We'll just say 500. Now these are actual numbers. So I was curious about that. They are coming in as, so this is different. So the description needs to be updated. So at some point he had mentioned that the values, and maybe I misread this. I'm sorry. It might be a different repo that I was looking at, but at some point I believe I read that the values were intentionally characters such that the person using it could specify the unit that they're interested in. I'm guessing this guy's British. That's a British pound sign there, and again that makes sense with the VAT. Okay, so we got a unit price. Let's just see if we can set the VAT at nothing. And what should happen is we have 3,000 here for strategy workshop. We have a 20% added onto that, so that total is 3,600. Now to 3,600 we should add another 2,000. So now the total invoice, we're going to be rich. We're going to be so rich. The total invoice number is going to be 5,600. If this works, we'll see. We shall see. I kind of like the format. Now it did look really quickly like we were getting some errors in there. Let's before we scrutinize this too much, let's see. Unknown font family, we're not too concerned about that. Allegria Sans, where is it pulling that from? Is there, I'm gonna copy this and see if it's anywhere in our example file. I don't remember seeing. I do not remember seeing that specified anywhere. So I believe there is also a style. There is a style template in here. And we would have to do some looking through here. So again, this is something that maybe I might be tempted to change, but let's see if we can change that really quick. I know I have some system fonts, and I'm not even sure this is the proper place to look, but we'll see if we can just change it to Arial. Make sure I spell Arial right. And then we do want to do another search here just to see if there is another specification. Okay, I'm gonna save this file. We've already now changed this person's good work a little bit. And this is not the proper way to make big changes. I'm kind of curious here. If I were being more serious about this, we would have we'd spend a little more time on making sure that that's the location. But I did see this error just quickly pop through, and it looks like that's the only error we're getting. So I want to see if we can. Just want to see if there's a way to get past that. That's a really quick and easy way to get past that. Um, and that's an old error. I didn't wipe out my background jobs listing there. So you know what? Let's change it to kind of a more fun font, as long as we know that that's where we can do it. And that's just the default, so we can override it as well. Algerian. See if we can pull an Algerian in there. I don't know why, but since I've started doing this with writing documents and making presentations and things this way, in this manner, like I've become so much more attuned to fonts. Like I just pay attention to them. I don't know. I like goofy fonts. It is a goofy font. Now, I'll probably go back and change that at some point because I don't want to mess with his template so much. There's a better way to specify fonts. It's not through the extension capability itself. It's through the YAML, and we'll do that. Look at this. So it's doing a great job with the math. It did accept 0 VAT. I would like to get rid of VAT just because I'm American, you know. No taxation without representation. Throw the tea in the harbor. All that good stuff. And I really hate this font. Let's get a. I know I'm spending too much time on fonts, but let's get a normal font going here. See what I got. Arial rounded looks kind of nice. Bond shrift actually looks fine. So let's do bond shrift. I'm probably gonna spell it wrong. Bond shrift. BAHN. Ah, just like it sounds. Bond shrift. All right, so let's try that. And that looks a little more professional, so I think I'm okay with that. You know, the initial one did not look bad. It's just the fonts are having a consequence on the rendering of the unit, of the dollar unit. And so that's where there's a big issue. So I do like the fact that this is now currency is built in. However, we're just going to have to guess at the values. So I think GBP was what we just deleted. Let me undo that. Yeah, GBP. And as a matter of fact, kind of a trick that I should be using here is instead of just deleting the YAML values do take the conventional R kind of commenting. So I can just use an inline octothorpe. And the inline octothorpe says, if this doesn't work, you can just go put the old one back. So let's see if it does US dollars. Then maybe we can do Japanese yen or something. Yeah, it came through fine. This is great. I love it. I really like it. I think we can do further descriptions here of what's going on as well. So let's look at our bigger example. So I'm not going to go to that help page that looks like it might have some outdated information on it because some of the fields we were trying were not the proper names. That's fine. But we still have we have euros now as the fine. I didn't even recognize that. So the fine down here is in euros. So euros is another option for us in terms of I'm getting confused. I have too many things open. But let's actually try euros because that's kind of cool. And I'm going to add USD to my list here on line 13 because I know that that's an option. So the bottom bit looks like it is. There's a lot of default that's in there. So the euro specification is in there by default. But if we look at the larger invoice example here, there are options to actually change that. And here you're seeing some of the specifications we can have for the font family that would be better than going into the typist template itself. Language is fine. What was I just looking for? Here's the penalty. So this is under the invoice field. So I'm copying and pasting from the broader one. And also you're seeing here, you are seeing that the indentations are quite different in the two different examples. We'll render the more complex example in a second just to see if that has any consequence. I do want to change the invoice. It looks like the boilerplate information at the bottom is, let's see, due is rendering here, but it looks like that information is also duplicated here. So I want to see what controls that. The late fee percent and the amount, I believe we should be able to change. We can do it right here under the reference. I believe this should be the same. So we're gonna change the currency to USD. We're gonna change the penalty to 400, and we'll change the fee to 5.8%. Now we'll see if those are actually rendered where we think they are. The due date, let's also change that to today. Now it's funny, they're using the European style for a lot of this stuff, but the formatting of the dates, they're using kind of good old American date formatting there. Okay, so it didn't like something. Variable fonts. Fonts? I didn't think we messed with fonts. So let's see the sender invoice. Looks to me like we're okay. Oh, I have duplicate fields in here. I'm guessing that's what's going on. Issued number. Okay, I think I avoided those. Still says it's having a duplicated key, so it must have missed one. Do reference. Oh, I have two references. And the currency, so it looks like the currency field, that makes sense. It's only expecting one. So that was kind of the, if we specify US dollars here, that should also render on the boilerplate at the bottom. Now we'll see, so we shall see, because it didn't before. It didn't look like it did. It just says 400, so it did actually pick up on our percent. So we would probably have to say something like 400 USD. Doesn't like that. So the penalty, it looks like the penalty doesn't seem to like the currency there. I wonder if we put the currency above. This is fun. Probably not as fun watching, but I'm gonna play with it. Why not? I'm gonna use this if I have anything to invoice coming up. I'll change a little bit. So I'll change probably the font. I will probably put a logo on there. Now I know that there was supposed to be the option of putting a logo on. I'm not sure where the logo is actually put. So this is going to be hit or miss, but we'll try to put a logo on here. Before we do that, let's run the more complex invoice that comes with the template and see what that looks like. Okay, so this you can see some of the branding here. So he definitely has branding that is different. So the Dodger blue in terms of the heading colors, I love that. You could set this to whatever your company font is, and the same thing with the fonts. So that's probably where you want to play with the fonts. Here's the mail to field that's coming through. And VAT number we don't want. I thought I read something about VAT being kind of a mandatory field, but let's look for that and see if we can just get rid of VAT altogether. Now the VAT number, there's a registration number and a VAT number. Registration number. Here it is on line 13. So I'm gonna slowly exclude a couple of the VAT things to see if we can just get rid of it. The first one we're looking for is the one that I'm most expecting to fail if something fails. And that's this field right here. Now you can see that this looks different as well. So there is some difference you can do in terms of table headings. But and again, you can do your own table in here. I know I did read that, but I'm loving this auto-generated table. I just think that's awesome. So let's see if we can just get rid of VAT to begin with in the table. So it just rendered at 0. That's less than ideal, but again, we could always go into the template files and change that. Now I'm going to take out the number, so that's great. So previously VAT was one of the places VAT was appearing was up here. If we uncomment that on line 13, that'll pop back, so you'll be able to see it. So there's the VAT number in the rendered document. I really love the looks of this. And one of the things I was interested in doing in our original example was giving a little more detail on our Bunkus and Hokum. So we want to say exactly what that is. So I'm going to give it some details, and we're going to say, let's see here. We're going to say Bunkus and Hokum, or we don't want to repeat it. These are what you get when you engage with the law firm of Dewey, Screw'em, and Howe. Except ampersand. We needed an ampersand in there. Let's see how that looks. Okay, so we should not have played with the font because I don't like the way this font looks, but that's fine. We can override that through branding, or I can go back in here and what was the name of the one it didn't like? La Grea Sands. So even though I don't have that, and maybe, so let's do this as a final thing this week. This is fun, so thanks for tolerating me doing this. It does look a little better when it's rendered in the default font. It does look like maybe the table, there's a little bit of overplotting there, but that could very well. I'm imagining that would get taken care of if we just added another something to charge. So let's see if we can charge something else here. So we have a strategy workshop. We have Bunkus and Hokum. And then we have an IV drip. Now, there's only one IV drip, but it's very important, so it's going to be expensive. $4,500. Yeah, what the heck? Let's add some tax to it. So if tax of 15% on that. Then I'm going to add some details. This is so you don't die. So you don't faint from the bill. Except we'll call it an invoice because that's what we're looking at. So the IV drip is so you don't faint from the invoice. And we're mostly curious to see about the overplotting. Yeah, that's fine. So it just didn't like, what it didn't like was it didn't like the larger description that we're giving it going as deep as it did. So I'm guessing that it's intended to just be a single line. After all, if these are business people, they just kind of wanted to get the basics. They don't, I don't know, you don't need to be too elaborate with your descriptions of things for people, for business, for people, for general business people. They just want to know the most important aspects. Now, to stress it just a little bit, and this is unfair to the author because I wouldn't have thought of this. But let's see if we can get this to the description to go on to a third line and just see what the consequence is. My expectation is, well, let's see. I guess it doesn't matter what my expectation is. These are what you get when you engage with the law firm of Dewey, Scrum, and Howe. However, we do also provide valet parking. And that deserves an exclamation point. So again, we're just seeing if maybe, yeah. So that was kind of the expectation. So there's going to be overplotting if you get too elaborate with the description. That's fine. That really doesn't bother me. Like I said, you're going to want to, if this is a proper invoice, the person being invoiced already knows what they're being billed for. This is just the receipt, and the receipt that's important for kind of documentation purposes. All right, super cool. Oh, logo. Before I drop, let's see if we can get a logo on there. Again, I'm not super confident just because some of the description that we're seeing in the help pages looks like it was maybe out of date. Let's see. Here's the references, and I know that I know I saw a logo detail on here somewhere. Oh, here's the other currencies. So euro, US dollar, Great Britain pound, Japanese yen. I'm guessing that's Chinese, whatever Chinese dollars are. Branding. Here's the branding. So this is where the logo should be. Do not see a logo option in here. We might not be able to get a logo on tonight. Well, here's a logo. So it looks like it should be in the same as the title, description, paper size section. Title. We didn't really do a title on this one. Well, let's just try it as its own field and see what happens. Worst that can happen is we get an error. So let's look for, I think it should be our logo. Let's look for Pink Panther S. What is that? I'm going to get in trouble here with my searches, so I'm not going to look for that. I don't know what that is. This is kind of silly. I don't actually like it. It looks computer generated, but we'll use it. So I'm going to save that in my repo. It's a JPEG, so that should be safe. We'll just call it Pink Panther. I'm going to save that where I believe the repository is, if I remember, what do we call it? Invoice. Invoice. So we will just save it there. And make sure we spell that right. I'm kind of skeptical that this is going to work. But there it is in my it's in the right location. It's probably not being called up properly in the YAML. Oh, yeah, definitely did not like that. We're in the right directory. Sometimes it wants a little forward slash there when we're working within these project directories. I just said that modern YAMLs are really good with quotes, double quotes, or not double quotes. I'm guessing it just doesn't like where we have it here. So let's try a couple different places and then we'll just call it. Because again, I'm not certain that that's actually the proper specification. Probably makes more sense in the brand kind of meta field. So we'll see if we can get it in this other specification. Now, logo's going to blow up on us. So it's definitely not liking those. Try one more thing. And then we'll just kind of acknowledge that, well, logo is something we have to work with a little bit. And again, it's not something that's stressed on the help pages. There were a couple of mentions of it, but again, we're also seeing that some of the help page information needs to be updated. But this looks great. I love it. I'm going to use it. Hopefully, I'll have need to use it. Hopefully, someone will owe me money for something here in the next little bit of time, and I will let you know how that goes when it does go. And maybe next week I'll also show what my default template looks like, generated from a more traditional PDF kind of background. But I really love this auto-generated table. I think that's fantastic, and that for me that's reason to use it. And again, you have documentation here of all the important information. You have documentation of of the numbers that you're doing and the unit price that you actually have. So I like the bottom boilerplate of fees and what the penalty actually is. I don't have that on mine, but it makes actually sense. It'd be nice if the fee could be, we're gonna send Vito after you, and Vito is gonna pulp you. Is gonna pound you into a bloody pulp. But I don't know. That probably wouldn't help in terms of return business, I'm guessing. All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you being here. If you have any ideas of what you'd like to see next week, let me know. Otherwise, I'm just going to do the same thing and kind of hunt and peck through the vast kind of repository of capabilities using these features that we talk about every week, and I'll cover it with the one exception that next week I will do a Quarto 1.10 install, and we will take a deeper look at some of the capabilities of 1.10 as well. I'm not sure that's enough for a full week, so I'll probably also look for a little feature to focus on as well. All right, good night, everybody.